And welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put On Waivers podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. A little overcast, but we still love it out here. My brothers and sisters on the surf are doing their thing this morning. RTPOW podcast is where you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook Live, and also all that good stuff like that. You can catch this show on the Cover 3 Deep Raiders channel on YouTube. So check that out. And also anywhere you can find podcasts where they are available. 858-429-9465 is our text line. So definitely give us a shout out there. We have a guest on our show today. You see his face and you know immediately who this man is. Kenny King Jr. Kenny, how you doing today?
What's good? I'm doing good. Just trying to reel in from that loss of the Warriors game last night, but I'm doing all right.
Doing all right, yeah. So everything. I mean, you're doing a great job with the podcast. I did see that. I follow you on Instagram. I saw that little tweet you had with all the subscribers and how's everything working out with Blue Wire. Good job. Good job with that. I give you a lot of credit for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Also, keep putting these those videos of the kids. Are hilarious. Don't stop doing those. Those are hilarious. Please, whatever you do, don't stop doing those.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I think first question is, I guess the next best thing to being a pro athlete is having a father who's a pro athlete. So like when you break it down, like how what was that situation like? Like what was that like to kind of be in that situation?
You know, the crazy thing is, having a dad as a pro athlete, my whole thing was always trying to make a name for myself. It was not trying to live in his shadow, and having the same name. You obviously have that name that you live off of, right? Where it's, as soon as you say your name, it's, oh, are you related to such and such? So of course I am. But for me, it was always trying to make a name for myself. And so, when I would play sports, I tried to play I tried to play his position. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be a running back. I'm too big. I'm fast enough to do it, but I'm too big to play running back. Yeah. And so I started playing defense and just try to make a name for myself on that side. But from the standpoint of growing up, as a son of an athlete, as a son of somebody who was, highly proficient at his time, it was cool because I was able to be around a lot of talented people, a lot of great people, some people that I probably would have never met if I hadn't been born in the position that I was. So I'm very fortunate for that. But at the same time, I always try to make a name for myself.
Yeah, no question about it. What's some of one of your fondest memories of those times? If you want to share any of those.
For me, I think the biggest thing. So my parents divorced when I was 2.
Yeah,
and when the Raiders were down in LA, I was born right as the transition was happening. So the Raiders had already moved to LA. And so when I was a little bit older, I would fly down to LA every week and I would stay with my dad for the weekend. We would go, I would go to the games with him. I'd be out there on the sideline. So he'd have somebody watching me on the sideline, and then we'd hit up Disneyland the next day. Yeah. And that was pretty much a weekly tradition. So it was like, I'd fly down, we go to the beach, we go to the game, go hit up Disneyland, and I'd come back to the Bay. And so that's probably my fondest memory just from the playing days. I think now that I'm older, I think the cool thing is that, I get to go to the events. And so, I see all these guys that I grew up around. I see the Rod Martins, I see the Mike Haynes, I see the Lester Hayes, I see these guys at these events, and I'm able to be around them. And it's like, it's pretty surreal that, I'm able to be around all these top tier players, all these Hall of Fame players. And, I look at them as uncles. And so I think that's pretty cool for me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It is pretty cool also to kind of see that iconic 80-yard play. I mean, you saw it with Charles Woodson as he introduced the schedule this year. I mean, that was just like, that play is just so etched in everybody's mind. Kind of cool to always look back at that as for Raider Nation. So talk about yourself a little bit now. You go from you played, and then you're going to, life comes at you, and then you end up coming into the podcasting game. How did that transition work out?
The transition from playing to podcasting was a long transition. It was a long transition. For me, I had gotten through a number of injuries in college. Probably had 3 surgeries on my knee by my junior year, and I had lost my scholarship to Temple University. And so I had another surgery, tried to come back. I got pulled on to Menlo College, a small D3 school in Northern California, and the trainers just weren't able to get things right. So I ended up looking at it and say, okay, I'm done. What do I do now? I ended up trying to figure out where I was going to go, trying to figure out what was happening. Didn't really have any direction. Went into the fitness industry, became a bouncer as well. So I managed. I was managing a gym for about 7 years. I was working as a bouncer at night and just kind of going through the motions there. And it wasn't really until a couple of years ago where, I started getting active on Twitter, and I started trying to figure out what, I got into Raiders Twitter, the cesspool of which it is.
Some days are good, some days are bad.
Yeah, it all depends. It all depends on what happens. When things are good, and things are bad, things are really bad. But I had actually started interacting with Cody, and started interacting with him on Twitter and kind of just going back and forth. And then he was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And I actually had started as the intro voice on his podcast. Started doing a couple call-ins. He called me one day and said, hey, I want to give you a segment. From that segment, basically we had, that kind of grew. My following started to grow. And then as his podcast started to change, I moved into a co-host role. And from there, I started doing my own thing, and I started writing more with Just Blog Baby. And I was like, you know what, I want to do something on my own. So I continued to work with him. But I sought out, creating my own YouTube, creating my own podcast. And now that's where I am today. So it was kind of, it happened by getting on Twitter. And it's weird that, you find a
now you want to get off. You want to get off Twitter. I would say exactly. The videos you had where you would talk about an AFC West opponent and say, this is why I hate y'all. That was the one where I was like, okay, I think you found your niche right there. Cause everybody loved those. So I thought those were really good. I would say too, if you should try to think about some voiceover work too. I mean, if you have a good voice for voiceover for commercials. Appreciate and stuff that. Like that.
I've thought about it.
Yeah, you should. I used to do commercials, and it's easy money. You just sit in your house and just read all day. And get paid for it.
Yeah, that's nice.
2020, another non-playoff year for the Raiders. What was the most frustrating thing going in retrospect, looking back at that season? Because I think going into that season, even with no fans, I just felt like, the offense was going to be, I thought the offense did it had some red zone issues once in a while, but they did their job. I mean, you're scoring the teams who scored 27 points or more in the league. They were the only team not to make the playoffs in that list of 10 teams. So what was the most frustrating thing for you looking back at last year?
I think for me, I go into every season thinking that the Raiders are going to make the playoffs. And I think that, my optimistic mind says, okay, this is our year. This is our year. This is our year. And I've been saying it for the past 18 years.
Yeah.
But last year was it was like, okay, we've got, we didn't know what we had in Nelson Aguilar. We were looking at Nelson Aguilar. Like, this guy's probably going to be a number 4 receiver. Like, Henry Ruggs is going to be number 1. Brian Edwards is probably going to be a standout guy. Yeah. But we knew what we had in Darren Waller. We knew what we had in Derek Carr. We knew what we had in Josh Jacobs. We looked at the offensive line and we're like, hey, this offensive line is they could be a powerhouse. We got Trent Brown. We got Richie Incognito. And then Trent goes down. And then Richie goes down. And then Nelson Aguilar stands out. And the offense still flourishes through all these things, but the run game starts to suffer. We notice the suffering in the run game. Then we have the red zone issues. Offensively, you look at the offense, there wasn't that many issues, but there's issues that couldn't correct the bigger problem, which was the defense.
Yeah.
and we look at that defense, and we look at the points per game that they gave up, we look at, the missed plays, we look at, Jonathan Abram biting on in the Chiefs game, you look at, Arden Key missing, face masking Ryan Fitzpatrick in the Dolphins game. And we look at these games.
Leading the league in missed tackles by a wide margin.
Right. leading the league in almost sacks.
Yes, I know. And, seriously. Arden Key.
And so that was for me, that was a disappointment for me. But for me, the biggest disappointment with that defense was that Paul Guenther came into the season as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
We saw what he did in 2019. John Gruden knew what he had in Paul Guenther. Yeah. We saw what happened with the late season collapse in 2019, and they still trotted him out there as a defensive coordinator. And that, I think that was one of my biggest issues, that John Gruden didn't make a decision sooner. I think that, that week 5 win against the Chiefs definitely saved Paul Guenther's job for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But my biggest disappointment was that defense, and then also the midseason collapse. It was the second year in a row that we had a midseason collapse.
Yeah. Yeah, it drove me crazy. And you had a guy on your show. You had Wade Phillips on your show, I believe, and that's the guy who at Raider Nation, where they talk about clamoring, they really wanted. I mean, listen, we got Gus Bradley, but like they really wanted Wade Phillips to be the defensive coordinator for this team. I live in the factual world. I don't live in the fantasy hatred world of Derek Carr. So like, to me, it's like, if you say he's a solid player, then you're a stan, all those other stuff like that. At the end of the day, I feel like I make this statement: build the team, because the team has never been complete, as much as you possibly can. And then if the team is complete and he's still not making the playoffs, then okay, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and make whatever move you want to make after that. But I still think, like, and people say you're making excuses for him, but at the end of the day, like, the only team who made the playoffs, who had a system like the Raiders where they gave up a whole lot of points and scored a lot of points, was the Tennessee Titans. Everybody wanted Deshaun Watson, to replace Derek Carr. We'll take a pause on that right now.
Right. He
had a horrible defense. Put up a whole lot of points. Put up a whole lot of great stats, but didn't get it done. But he made the playoffs a couple of times. Whatever. 9-7. Thoughts about, like, the whole thing about, we're so split on a guy who is probably just, I mean, he's really a solid, don't have to worry about off the field, make plays down the field, did everything you asked him to do last year. He did last year, and people are still not satisfied. Is it just like the nation just want to make the playoffs so bad, or is it just like unrealistic thoughts?
No, you know what I think it is? And this is me, I'm not speaking for Raider Nation, but my observation is that Raider Nation has a grass is greener mentality. They see Patrick Mahomes, they see a Deshaun Watson, they see a Russell Wilson, they see an Aaron Rodgers, and they think, well, why don't we have that guy? And I'm sorry, but unless you're going to give up a ton of draft capital, unless you're going to tank the season, you're not going to have a Pat Mahomes. You're not going to have a Deshaun Watson. I don't even know if you want a Deshaun Watson off the field right now. But you look at Derek Carr, you've got a top 10 quarterback. You've got a guy who does everything that he's asked of. He's got a great deep ball. He's accurate. He makes plays. He's been moving with his legs. He's been scoring touchdowns with his legs. There's things that obviously need correction. He needs to work on the turnovers. He needs to help.
The fumbles.
Right. If he corrects the fumbles, that's a big issue right there, because he doesn't make interceptions. So he's not throwing interceptions, but he has fumbles. And so you correct that, you correct a lot of issues. But I think you hit the nail on the head. You look at this team, he hasn't had a team built around him. And you look at most quarterbacks in the league that have had success, the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady's, the Russell Wilsons, those are all guys that have had teams built around them. Even Jimmy Garoppolo took that Niners team to the Super Bowl.
One reception away from the championship.
Yeah, and I think the issue with Jimmy, and to get off the tangent real quick, but the issue with Jimmy is that Jimmy couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah.
I think if Jimmy could stay healthy, then Jimmy would still be, we'd still be talking about Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback, and Trey Lance wouldn't be in San Francisco. But, I think that's the biggest thing. You look at Derek Carr, he's been on the field, he's played through injury. And I think that Raider Nation just has that grass is greener mentality, and they want what the others have, because they see, well, the Chiefs got rid of Alex Smith and brought in Pat Mahomes, and they went and won a Super Bowl. The Chiefs got rid of Alex Smith because Alex Smith was also another guy who was injured all the time.
Yeah.
Alex Smith probably could have taken that Chiefs team to a Super Bowl. That Chiefs team was so dynamic that I think that pretty much anybody could have won with that team. But I think that that's the bigger issue, is that Raider Nation just kind of, they want what they can't have.
Yeah. And then not to mention last year, if the defense just gave you a couple of plays here and there, the Raiders would have swept the division. Like they would have swept the AFC West, because
look at the 2016 team, right? The defense wasn't good.
They got turnovers,
but they made turnovers when it mattered.
Yep.
That Carolina game, Khalil Mack came up huge.
Yep.
That Buffalo game, Khalil Mack came up huge. And so those are the games. Like Reggie Nelson came up huge in 2016. So those are things where you look at where it's like, the defense doesn't have to be a top 10 defense. Everybody talks about, the defense has to be a top 10 defense for the Raiders to win. No, Derek Carr doesn't need a top 10 defense. He just needs a defense that can get turnovers and get sacks.
Yep.
Anybody needs that. Do
people realize that as much as Tom Brady, we go crazy for Tom Brady, that if the defense doesn't force a fumble on Jared Cook, they lose the Saints game?
Yeah.
If they don't get turnovers galore in these playoffs, he doesn't make Tom Brady in the NFC Championship game threw 3 INTs in the second half. And what helped them go to the Super Bowl was Devin White and the company on defense. That's the reason why they went to the Super Bowl. I know Tom Brady gets all the pub, and I understand because it's the quarterback league, but you got to understand they had a ready-made team, and they were able to plug Tom Brady in there, and that's why they won the whole thing. Moving to the 2021 free agents class, who's your favorite guy out of that class? They did add a bunch of guys, especially interior, letting Key go, letting Hurst go, Solomon Thomas, people like that.
My favorite was Nick Martin. I'm just kidding.
I'm trying to say it with a straight face. Maybe add some for centers. I don't know, cuz.
No, honestly, no. My favorite signing was Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest need that we had. And not a knock on Farrell. I like Farrell. Not a knock on Crosby, but Yannick brings that playoff mindset. He brings a leadership ability. He brings sacks. And he's a guy that, has
forced fumbles.
Forced fumbles. He's the closest to Khalil Mack that Raider fans are going to get right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what the Raiders need. I look at that rotation now where you've got Yannick, you've got Klee, you've got Mad Max. That's a pretty solid rotation.
Yeah.
Losing Mo Hurst kind of hurt, kind of stung, but looking at it, I kind of get it. Just looking at what Gus Bradley wants to do, he prefers size on the defensive line, and that's why he brought in Solomon Thomas. But I think Yannick is probably my favorite, and then I would say Casey Hayward is probably a close second.
Sounds good as far as that goes. I'm reviewing the draft. I can't remember a Raider team that has had this kind of athleticism and talent at the safety position. They just they kept on going all in on safety. Like people I don't know how Levitt was going to make the team on this one. Thank God. But we thoughts about who's looking at this class, who's one of your guys a couple guys who you really love?
Yeah. So I had mocked Trayvon Merrick to the first round. I had him picked as one of I did a video on YouTube, and I did a top 3 players that I wanted. Micah Parsons was number 1, obviously. Trayvon Merrick was number 3, and Tevin Jensen was number 2. And so when we traded up into the second round to get Trayvon Merrick, I was really, really excited. I thought that, he brings exactly what the Raiders need to defense.
Yeah.
But then you bring in a guy like Tyree Gillespie, and that excites me as well because, everybody compares him to a Cam Chancellor. And then you've got a Divine Diablo who's, plays at the same school as Cam, same size as Cam, and now he's got the same coach. And so, but Trayvon was probably my favorite pick of the draft.
Yeah, I really can't wait to see him play. I really can't. Just seeing that since that single high safety doing this thing. So we're gonna go a little. I think that's one. So we're gonna go a little pick 6 here. 6 questions, real quick answers. We'll see what you got. We'll see what we got, Mr. Kenny King here. First, are the A's going to Vegas?
Yes. I hate to say it, but I don't trust Oakland.
Oh man, it's really too bad because the idea of where that place, what Mark Davis wanted to do was tear that whole thing down and just put 2 stadiums there. It would have worked perfectly, especially with the BART right there. It's just ridiculous.
It's all Mark's fault, right?
Oh yeah, it's not Mark's. Mark had the vision to do it the right way, but the A's are just the A's are just the A's. What are you gonna say?
Exactly.
I'm a Giants fan. I hate the A's. Sorry. Warriors, Grizzlies. Who you got?
Warriors.
Favorite Kanye album?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's got to be My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Interesting. Yeah,
that's top 10 of all time album.
Yeah, he's him in the studio is pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff comes out. Over under on Tim Tebow receptions at tight end. The number is 10 right now. Over or under?
Shoot, with Urban Meyer,
they're gonna. It could be a bunch of
It's gonna be nuts. I'm gonna give. You know what? I'm gonna give him 7.
7.
But I hope I don't see Tebow Mania Part 2.
Oh my God! Well, it's Florida. You never know what you're gonna see in Florida.
Exactly.
The Raiders have obviously they're gonna be moves here and there. Who is the Raider who is on his last leg? Who might not be on the team next year?
As far as 2021 or 2022?
2022. Like if we do this again next year, like who might not be on the team if they don't perform?
I look at if they don't perform at number 2. I'm going to say Corey Littleton.
Okay, that's fair. I think he will bounce back, but that's fair.
I think he will too. But I could see them moving. I can see Bradley moving a guy.
Yeah. Breakout player 2021.
Jonathan Abram.
Close to the line of scrimmage, go and get in the quarterback. I like that. All right, Kenny. Thank you for joining us here on the Put On Waivers podcast NFL show. I appreciate it. Appreciate the time. Take care.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
No problem.